Hey timekeepers, welcome to mock trial. This orientation will help prepare you for your timekeeping role. Timekeepers like you play an important role in keeping a trial moving along. Remember, each team needs at least one person to serve as a timekeeper. Your timekeeper will work with the timekeeper from the other team during each round of the competition. This orientation will cover important highlights from the timekeeping guide. Your coaches should have given you a copy of the timekeeping guide, and it can also be found on our website. It's important that you take the time to fully review the information found in that guide before the competition. Let's start by going over the supplies you'll need as a timekeeper. There's some things that you'll need to provide yourself, and some things we'll provide for you. First, you'll need 2 stopwatches. Please note that you need to use actual stopwatches and not your phone to keep time. 2 stopwatches will be provided in your team packet that you'll receive when you check in. Please be sure to return these stopwatches at the end of the competition so we can use them again next year. 1 stopwatch is for timing the plaintiff, and the other is for timing the defendant. Both timekeepers will time everyone. It doesn't matter which side your team is playing. You also need to make sure that you have pencils to fill out your timekeeping sheets during the rounds. You want to use pencils rather than pens to make it easier to correct any errors. While it's not required, you should consider bringing a clipboard with you. You may end up sitting in a spot where you won't have a solid surface to write on, and a clipboard will make your job a lot easier. But this is up to you. We won't have clipboards available. Your team packet will also contain a set of time cards. Please keep these throughout the competition. We'll also give you a time card use table that helps remind you when to hold up each time card. Finally, we will provide you with enough timekeeping sheets so you have one to fill out for each round of competition, along with a couple extras. Time cards, the time card use table, and timekeeping sheets can also be found at the back of your timekeeping guide. You can use the samples there during team practices. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of what will happen during a trial, a quick word about the separate duties for each timekeeper. The procedures for individual duties are described on pages 4 through 6 of your timekeeping guide. Please make sure you're clear on your duties before you get to the competition. The plaintiff timekeeper is responsible for calling the court to order at the beginning of a round and after any breaks. You're also responsible for timing the debriefing session that takes place after the recess. The defense timekeeper is responsible for collecting the scoring packet from the presiding judge when the judges return from their recess. The packet will be given to you in a manila envelope and must immediately be delivered to competition staff in the scoring room. Remember, it's critical that the envelope is sealed when the presiding judge hands it to you. Any packet that is delivered unsealed or damaged could result in penalties to your team. If the judge hands you an unsealed envelope, politely ask her to seal it. Before the round starts, make sure that you have all of your equipment and materials ready. Find the right place to sit where your team has a clear view of you so they can see the time cards when you hold them up. This is usually somewhere near the jury. And introduce yourself to the other timekeeper. The 2 of you will be working together as a timekeeping team, so it's helpful to take a minute or 2 to get to know each other. Here's the basics of what timekeepers do during a round. Timekeepers work together as neutral partners. We'll go over this in more detail, but you really want to take the time to know when to start and when to stop timing. You can work on this during team practices. Timekeepers need to display their time simultaneously to their teams and make sure team members can see the time cards but are not distracted by them. You need to record the time at the end of each segment of the trial. The timekeeping guide has a sample that shows you what that looks like. Here are a few reminders for when you should both start and stop timing. Start timing when a witness or attorney starts to speak. Stop timing during objections. That means you should stop timing when an attorney says objection and keep the stopwatch off while the attorneys argue the objection. Once the judge rules on the objection, start timing again. Do not stop timing for the introduction of an exhibit. Each part of the trial is timed separately, and time from one part does not carry over to another part. You'll need to reset your stopwatches to 0 at various times. Reset your stopwatch at the beginning of each side's opening statement, at the beginning of each side's direct examinations, at the beginning of each side's cross-examinations, and at the beginning of each side's closing arguments. Remember, there's also an optional 3-minute break before closing arguments, and if this break is taken, you will also need to time that as well. Just as there are times when you must reset your stopwatches, there are also times when it's critical that you don't reset them. This includes at the end of the direct and cross-examinations. You will need to resume timing for redirect and recross examination. And at the end of the plaintiff's closing argument, you will need to resume timing for the plaintiff's rebuttal if they have any time remaining and choose to give a rebuttal. A quick word about timing discrepancies. First of all, they very rarely happen, so while you want to pay attention, you don't want to panic about it. We use what's called the 15-second rule. This means at the end of a segment of a trial, if there's a difference of more than 15 seconds between timekeepers, that counts as a timing discrepancy. At the end of each segment of the trial, meaning after openings, witnesses, and closings, you want to quickly check in with the other timekeeper to make sure you've got close to the same time. If you do have a timing discrepancy, you'll want to notify the presiding judge and she'll decide how to resolve the discrepancy. Make sure you take the time to study the timing discrepancies section of the timekeeping guide before the competition. Once the trial's over, you still have a few tasks. You want to make sure that your timesheet is fully filled out and signed. You want to make sure that there are no timing violations. A timing violation is when someone uses more time than they have for a segment of trial. For example, if an attorney spoke for 5 minutes and 10 seconds during an opening, that would be considered a timing violation. You want to make sure you notify the presiding judge if that happens. Finally, before the judges leave the courtroom, make sure you've given the presiding judge your completed timesheets. The finished timesheets are part of the scoring packet that gets turned in. Here are a few reminders for what you should do after the trial is over. Help your team straighten up the courtroom. It's important to leave the courtroom like it was when you got there. Make sure you take all your belongings with you when you leave the courtroom. You are responsible for making sure you leave the Capitol with the same items you arrived with. We want to make sure you're able to be a successful timekeeper. So if you have any questions after reviewing the timekeeping guide or watching this orientation, please let your coach know and have him or her contact us. Best of luck to you and your team as you prepare for the competition. We look forward to seeing you soon.